This week's Torah portion is Parshat Shoftim, which speaks of the commandment to establish judges and legal systems in the land when we enter into it. It's a timeless and always timely message. In fact, as I looked back over my 20 years of rabbinic sermons and files from examples of when I had spoken on this verse previously, invariably it had always been relevant to the time. No matter what is going on in the world, the pursuit and the doing of justice is topical. And this parsha speaks with a prophetic voice and vision, certainly in the present tense. As Canada confronts its own history and of structural racism, and not only history, but its present tense as well. As the US straddles between two political conventions and their competing cries of injustice, and as our world grapples with a global pandemic and climate crisis and economic crisis and refugee crisis and crises of crises, our parsha reminds us, because we seem to always need reminding, that justice and its pursuit are the foundation of the world. This week's parsha teaches that more than anything else, human beings can do to show their appreciation for being alive, show their appreciation, if we believe it this way, to God for the creation of the world, or to whatever we call this thing, this entity, this being, this cosmic force that enables such miracles to take place in such beauty. To show our appreciation for the world that we live in, if there is one way that is most appreciated, if there is one thing that is asked of us by our tradition, it is the pursuit of justice and the doing of righteousness. It is our shlichut. It's our sacred purpose. To quote the Blues Brothers, it is our mission from God as God's partners in an unredeemed world to bring about its redemption. How does the Parsha make this point? It does it through a powerful yet relatively brief verse. The Parsha commands, Tzedek Tzedek tirdof, justice, justice you shall pursue. Our tradition gives many reasons for these words to be repeated, noting that words are not repeated in Torah without intention, and very seldom are they repeated at all. The most familiar repetition is, of course, Avraham, Avraham, in the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, where the angel wants to make sure that he has Abraham's full attention, he or she has Abraham's full attention before Abraham sacrifices his son Isaac. To which Avraham responds, of course, Hineni, here I am, I hear you. You have my attention. Most explanations note that Tzedek Tzedek is repeated because there is the justice of compromise and the justice of adjudication, or that they are repeated for emphasis to impress upon the Israelites how important the pursuit of justice is in the world. And I don't disagree with any of these. In fact, I've used them in many of those sermons that I've talked about. But I want to add another explanation, one that I don't often share. Not for how long the verse is, made longer by the repeated words, but for how short it is. The Torah takes only three words, to tell us that the pursuit and doing of justice is the most important aspect of our relationship and partnership with God and each other, which, as an aside, reminds me of an old rabbi's joke, not from old rabbis, but it's been around a long time. The rabbi explains to his congregation apologetically, I am sorry my sermon is so long. I didn't have time to make it short. With only three words, why only three words? Because the doing of justice, while it may require a lot of effort and hard work, it does not require a lot of words to explain. Justice, while not simple, is often straightforward. Justice is the right thing. To quote the Rabbi Spike Lee, it is to do the right thing. The thing that we know in our soul is what is required to make a situation right, to treat a person fairly. Justice is not simple, but it is so often obvious. It is the wrong thing, the halfway, the slippery slope of values versus desires, the abdicating of justice, and the eventual realization that we have been unjust that takes a lot of explanation. And for proof, we need only look at the lengthy explanations given by our politicians when called out to explain an unjust policy, or even those who disregard public health bylaws in the midst of a pandemic and are caught and called out for that. If they had put as much effort into observing the health guidelines or the basic principles of the social compact as they do in trying to justify their unjust activity, our world would be a more just place. It's a simple test, but one we would do well to remember and to learn from Torah and this week's Parsha. Justice and righteousness are obvious. We may have to work hard to get there, but what is right and what is wrong quite often stands out like a repeated word in the Torah. Our job, our obligation is, as the Torah commands, lirdof tzedek, to pursue it, to pursue justice. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be God's will, and may it be our will. Amen.